we utilize a lot of different disciplines. Some examples here are botany, biology, agriculture, horticulture, geography, anthropology, and so on. But I also can add soil microbiology, earthworks, water management, and just so many things. If we are to understand nature, if we are to work with nature, and nature is very complex, we have to have some kind of interdisciplinary help. We need to look into a lot of different disciplines to have a holistic view of how the whole thing works. On the upper level, you see corporations, businesses, suburbs. So really, it tries to involve all the facets of the social and landscape. Is permaculture sustainable? Permaculture basically tries to be beyond sustainability. Well, I mean, we've come to see sustainability as kind of the top kind of system we try to get to, when in fact, as you see in the sustainability is actually very low on the level of, should I call it, regeneration. We have conventional systems which we're using today, which are decreasing resources and self-destructive. They cause self-destruction, and that's what we're doing to the planet. Green, which is another catchword, is also very low on this scale. Technologies and techniques, neutral, and that's where sustainability comes. Sustainability is basically taking as much as you produce. Basically, you take from something and you give back as much as you took without hurt. So it is kind of neutral. It is kind of just staying in the middle. Now there's 3 notches above that: restoring, reconciling, and regeneration. Permaculture is a regenerative design. Basically, if you're growing crops, for example, using permaculture, you're not actually just keeping the soil as it was last season. You're building soil. You're building microorganisms. You're building biodiversity. So you're actually making improvements, not just staying neutral. So that's very important to understand as well. We get into design because we call this permaculture design. Permaculture is just the design methodology. It just gives us the tools to bring things together. We have an ecosystem that has relationships with its components. Permaculture tries to maximize the synergy between those components, the relationships. That's really what permaculture is about, is these relationships, how to design better relationships. In any design, really, there's 3 steps. The technique, or how something is done. Then you devise a strategy, how and when, and then the actual design. How, when, what, where, but always starting with why. There's 5 principles for any design. First, we articulate goals. So if you're going to start a permaculture design, what are some of the goals that you have? Bill Mollison has a very kind of interesting way of looking at problem solving. He says that the problem is the solution. Just the way you look at a problem the way you write down your questions, your concerns, where you're trying to recreate, usually the solution is within that formulation. So articulating goals, writing them down, is the first step in design methodology. Second is analyzing and assess. What do you have already in the system to work with? What do you lack? So you have to know kind of your pros and your cons. You have to know what kind of advantages you have. And assess. Basically, you go to a landscape and you have to analyze and assess climate, the direction of the sun, the movement of the wind, the shape of the landscape, and so on. Then the design phase starts. And that's where you put everything together, trying to maximize synergies between the different components. So first you have to understand what each component does. For example, a tree gives you shade, gives fruit, fixes nitrogen, and has a multitude of other good stuff that it provides. How do you maximize those outputs? How do you put it somewhere where some other thing is going to take advantage of the shade? Something else is going to need it. How are you going to put something that needs the nitrogen also next to it, so no energy gets lost? So everything is sharing with everything else. And that's what design methodology tries to do. Then you implement you implement your designs, and you just watch. You watch the system and how it is going to start evolving. Then you evaluate. These are used in permaculture design, but I think they could be used, again, we're talking about many disciplines, and anything that could be true for this system can also be true anywhere else. It's just a matter of retranslating the language. These are some of the principles of permaculture design, and we're going to go through them in some detail. Stacking functions, maximizing biodiversity, conservation, small-scale intensive systems, sharing, catch and store, and no waste. The stacking of functions is what I kind of just talked about, is obtaining many yields from one element. Most elements in nature don't just provide one thing. They all have multiple things to give. So many functions, just as a tree gives shelter, wood, food, and improves soil. So any element that we work with, we try to maximize the outputs. Biodiversity is the variation of life forms within a given ecosystem or the entire Earth. It's often used as a measure of the health of a biological system. Now, the more things we have working for us, the more diverse our system is, the more beneficial it usually is, the better it works, and the most resilient and stable it usually is. Usually, that's the problem with monocultures. Monocultures is a field of wheat, for example. It's just planting just one particular crop. And usually that's very prone to disease, very pesticide intensive. There's a lot of problems that arise because there's no support from other species. There's no synergy. There's just one particular species trying to survive on its own. And that's not how nature works. That's not how forest systems work. It's just cooperation. It's not the number of diverse things in a system that leads to stability, but the beneficial connections between them. And again, that's what we try to maximize, is the connections between the different components. Conservation, and this is a good example of conservation. You're going to be designing a house and a septic system and a sewer system. Where does the water go? A lot of the systems we have now for flushing black water, which is toilet water, we actually use processed, clean drinking water to flush our toilets, which is a lot of waste. That's the same water that we use for the washing machine. And with this schematic, we see that the black water has a different path than the gray water, which is water from the shower and the washing machine. So some water goes to a reeds bed and gets filtered and cleaned, the gray water. And the gray water is reused. For example, shower and washing machine water can be used for flushing toilets. We don't have to use clean water for that. So this is an example of conservation and intelligent design, just doing many things with one system and kind